Yo, what up, dudes? Robby Rowe. I have a question here on my recent outing breakdown. I can link in this video as well. I have a comment here that's a really good question, something that I've actually been wanting to do more stuff on. I've talked about it a little bit in outing breakdowns, but I'll throw the question up on the screen. The question reads, I was wondering if you use advanced scouting reports on hitters to form your approach, and if so, what are the key stats or observations you use? Boom, great. I'm going to grab a ball for this. Great freaking question. Bunch of things that immediately pop into my mind when I first read this question. First thing that comes to my mind is advanced scouting reports we have access to at the levels that I've played at. And at different points in my career, I have been one to utilize some of the advanced scouting, some of the new age data analytics, sabermetrics, call it what you want. But I have found through, again, this is just me personally, my personal experience. When I was a starting pitcher, I got drafted in 2010, pretty high pick. And I felt as if at that time, the thing to do was to dive deep as a starting pitcher into scouting reports, reading hitters, carrying a notebook around, taking down notes. And I wouldn't say that's advanced scouting by any means, but at that time, you got to think, right, 2010 to 2013, I was a starting pitcher in the Arizona Diamondbacks organization and then traded to the Pittsburgh Pirates organization. And at that time, it wasn't so much about advanced scouting that the team had. It was more so that we were doing stuff on our own, on our own time with our own eyes, maybe sometimes with or without the team's pitching coach. But I found at that time that for me to be the best version of myself as a pitcher, I think it's more so relying on my strengths and understanding what I do well, not from just like an attack and scouting report dynamic, but more so like from a personality, how I carry myself, like my thought process and all that stuff. And I felt at that time, again, this could just be because I was younger, didn't know how to filter a lot mentally, but at that time, it was more so like a burden. It was more so overwhelming. I'm very OCD perfectionist, and I felt like while in performance, it was hindering my performance because it wasn't allowing me to be completely free. I did a segment the other day on, how the fear of throwing strikes or the fear of overthinking and overthinking in general, how that hinders athleticism. And that was something that early in my career was like super, super apparent. I was like, dude, like I'm going out there and I'm like thinking too much. I got all these numbers in my head and I got like, this guy swings at first pitch this percentage of time. This guy doesn't hit breaking balls well. This guy hits 123 off a glove side down fastball, like all these things that I felt that I was attempting to prepare myself mentally and physically for, a good result in the game. But in doing so, I think I just kind of suffocated myself and it was very restrictive. I know I'm not answering this particular question in terms of advanced scouting reports and the metrics, but I wanted to give some context and some good nuggets in there as well. Now, as I got older, and this kind of goes hand in hand with the simplicity that came from being a bullpen guy. But as I got older, I got moved to the bullpen and then kind of taking everything that I've learned early in my career, applying it later in my career. That's when I started finally having a little bit of success out of the pen, back end of the pen, where it was more so the mindset of just attack, go out there. Hey, I throw pretty hard. Here it is, hit it. And then I got a freaking wrinkle. Here it is, hit it, whatever. That's a very oversimplification to the attack mode at that point. But what was really interesting, I'd say, is right when, I got to big league camp in 2016, repeated in 2017, and then got released actually out of minor league camp in 2017 from the St. Louis Cardinals organization, went to Indy Balls 2017, 2018, threw really well in Indy Ball in 2018, finally ended up getting picked up by the Texas Rangers. I want to say I believe it was May or early June of 2018, got picked up by the Texas Rangers. And that's when I first saw this data analytics push, right, in affiliated baseball, where I think at that point I was starting again. I was kind of coming out of the pen, long guy, like I was just whatever, they needed me to be. But the times that I did start, the times that I did pitch, the next day I showed up, there was a piece of paper on my desk. Not on my desk. I didn't have a desk on my chair in my locker. And without really, and again, this is 2018, so take this with a grain of salt because there wasn't a whole lot of understanding right, with what these types of numbers meant and all this stuff. I felt like at that point was when, as in 2017 as well, with St. Louis, I was always one that wanted to like throw on the TrackMan and all this stuff, but like having no idea what all this, data analytics stuff meant. But it was at that time where I saw like, frick, there's a huge missing piece to this, right? Like there's a huge missing bridge guy. And it was kind of just like, here's these numbers, do with it what you will. And so around that time was when I started becoming familiar, obviously me being just naturally curious and kind of wanting to know everything. That was when I fully dove into it myself. And then granted, in the long run, I ended up blowing out my Latin that 2018 season, had to miss pretty much the second half of 2018. All of 2019, and then COVID happened in 2020. So a good amount of time off, from worrying about performance. And that was when I was able to train a totally different side of the game with data analytics and understanding all of these things that were coming into new age baseball, which was super interesting, but extremely beneficial. And I found that I was starting to get better at that point with the ability from my end to take on copious amounts of information, find ways to translate it to make sense and to simplify in my head, to then when I did get back into playing, that 2020 season was the COVID league, got a couple starts in that. And then 2021, I was like kind of fully back, playing starting pitcher in indie ball 2021, 2022. And it was funny because there was times where I felt as if the approach, right? And again, this is indie ball too. So like the amount of information that we had was nowhere near what the information is available for players now. I wouldn't say like in affiliated ball in the big leagues, of course, but shoot, even indie ball, it's like the advancement in all this technology in the game exploded from that time gap right around that COVID league, to where it was like in affiliated ball, I went from basically like kind of having to do stuff on my own and pick some people's brains along the process, to get some information, to where it was like, all right, fast forward a couple years later, 2021, 2022, shoot, we were in indie ball, man. We had, Yacker Tech, which is a technology very similar to TrackMan Rapsodo, where it would accumulate a lot of this data. So I know we're 8 minutes into this video, but now I can kind of start getting into this question. I found out later in my career that I was able to take on a little bit more information, but I think the goal for me at that point was not so much how much information can I take on and still compete and play and throw, pitch my game essentially, but it was, all right, what information do I need, right? What is it out of all of this vast array of numbers and information? Like, what is it that I need to kind of fixate on? And I personally found that taking on a lot of context, right? Like taking on a lot of information from me personally was still not good. I felt like I kind of still got away from my game a little bit, but especially with guys that succeeded off me kind of consistently, I'd say those were the guys, and there was probably one or two in every lineup that I would face, again, indie ball, that I would kind of dive a little bit deeper into the advanced scouting reports and start looking at counts, attack counts that this particular hitter would want to engage most in. And honestly, for me, I think the biggest advanced scouting things that I wanted to fixate on, especially as a starting pitcher, it varies honestly as a bullpen guy, because as a bullpen guy, more so you're looking at when does he like to swing? Does he have a 2-strike approach? What quadrants is he looking to do damage in? Starting pitchers, there's going to be a little bit more information there because you're going to face him multiple times. But I think the biggest things that I want to know as a starter was kind of piggybacking off what I was saying earlier with like, is this guy early in the count swinger? Is he super aggressive early? Does his approach change with guys in scoring position? Does his approach change with guys on base? Is he someone that doesn't feel comfortable with 2 strikes, so he's going to try to engage in counts earlier? Or does he feel comfortable late in counts? Does he feel comfortable with 2 strikes? Does his approach change with 2 strikes? What parts of the plate is he looking to do damage in? Is he spitting off speed early, and is he engaging off speed late? Like, there's a lot of things you can break down, but basically the really cool thing about today's day and age is, like I was saying with the Yacker Tech, is if you have a pretty good system, you can go in and get as close to absolutes as possible. Now, I believe baseball is so unique in that there's really, not a whole lot of absolutes, but there's for sure tendencies. And we always say, like, numbers don't lie, check the tendencies. So with tendencies come, is he going to this specific part of the field in this specific count? And like I said earlier, is especially in indie ball, it's going to be different in affiliated ball, big leagues, because there's guys 1 through 9 that can do damage to you. Indie ball, although indie ball is like extremely talented now, and obviously I haven't really had a whole lot of success in indie ball, so take this with a grain of salt. But in indie ball, it's not so much 1 through 9 is going to hurt you, right? Like there's going to be guys that probably put up a good AB and whatnot, but you're looking at 3, 4 guys max that can do some serious damage, and those are the guys that I would go in and a little bit and get a little bit more advanced, I would say, in that scouting report process. And again, that looks very similar to just understanding. And again, when you're looking at damage, you're looking at typically guys that drive runs in, a problem at the dish with guys in scoring position. All right. Base is empty. It's a little bit different. So basically what I do is I would go in and I would just look at either like past game films if I've faced this lineup multiple times and kind of just observe. I know that's not too far advanced scouting reports, but basically what I was wanting to know more often than anything else is exit velos in particular counts versus particular pitches. That would give me pretty much a good understanding. And you can get a little bit more advanced because you can look at like right-handed pitchers with a vertical approach angle very similar to mine, right? Or you look at right-handed pitchers with very similar arsenal, very similar repertoire to mine to get pretty close to like absolutes. But for me, what it comes down to is just tendencies, right? And basically a hitter's approach. A hitter is basically going to tell you what his approach is if you face him, in a series, like as a starting pitcher. If you face him twice in a season, you get a pretty good idea just from observing, right? Like what his approach is. But then you can take that a step further, like you said, with advanced scouting reports. And then that's where I would form an approach, because I'm going to then tailor a little bit, again, not change too much because I don't want to get completely out of my game. I'm somebody as a starting pitcher, I don't really throw with a lot of velocity. I'll get it up, maybe to like 91, 92 as a starter. I think 2021 was a little bit different because I was just coming back, so I'd get it up to 95 then. Not really overpowering as a starting pitcher. So I'm somebody that's probably going to rely more upon like craftiness to get somebody out. But going into the advanced scouting reports, I would just want to see tendencies from a hitter. When is he trying to engage? And then I know this isn't advanced scouting, but like you can go in and just look at old school spray charts. Nowadays, they're going to be a little bit different because those spray charts are probably going to be accompanied with like an exit velo and like the pitch. But shoot, man, there's so much dang information. Just to answer the question, again, I've already said this probably, but I know this is so much context. Advanced scouting reports, there's one key piece, like I said earlier, with exit velocity in particular locations. So you're including the heat map, but you're also including the particular counts and you're including the particular pitch. So for example, big bopper coming up first and second, right? RBI opportunity and could potentially do some damage. For me to know that, let's say he does on average 95.1 miles per hour exit velocity. So that, again, that has to be balls being put into play that could potentially record an out, right? So that particular number in exit velocity, say when it's 2 balls, no strikes, and then you can even go deeper into that and you can go 2 ball. So a 2-0 count, first and second, righty on the mound, exit velocity versus this particular pitch in that particular count. So for me, another piece that I'm looking at too is the pitch speed of whatever it is. The more I play, the more I realize that the speed difference on the particular sequences and pitches play a huge role in obviously like disruption of timing. So that's going to be something I'm going to look at too, kind of another layer, especially if it's if someone that historically hits pretty well off me. I'm wanting to see now like that velocity difference from pitch to pitch because you'll see in advanced scouting that some guys struggle. Anything like under 75, give you an exit velo, give you an average, give you an expected WOBA. And then, so any pitch from, 15 to 20 inches of vertical movement or 15 to 20 inches of horizontal movement on a fastball, you can come up with exit velos, again, average. Like, it's really interesting because you can break it down to basically see, does the guy struggle with ride guys, up in the zone, big hole there. Guys struggle with two seam guys, horizontal movement. You can kind of come up with this approach of attacking him vertically or horizontally. And as a starter, for me, I'm somebody, again, going off craftiness, that you can look at, okay, I'm probably going to get this guy more so vertically where it's fastballs up, curveballs down, as opposed to like, all right, now I'm going cutter, slider, and changeups in. So that's going to give me a good idea too, approaching a guy, again, that's more so advanced with guys that historically do pretty well off me. But on an average start against a team that I haven't faced yet, I can basically just pull up a game. And that's what's so cool about today's day and age. Even in indie ball, they have game streams, right? I can pull up a stream from the previous game in which, this lineup faced a right-handed pitcher. And I would probably want to be a little bit more precise with that right-handed pitcher. I'm not going to want to watch a game from a guy that attacked that lineup at 5'8" through 99, right? Like, I'm going to try to get as close to similar as possible, especially with similar offerings, because if you watch games against a certain lineup that you're going to be facing, the attack plan, the approach for a lot of the hitters based on what you throw as a pitcher is probably going to be roughly the same across the board, right? Fastball in this particular location, majority of the time at this particular velocity, second best pitch is this, going to want to throw it in this particular count. So their attack plan is going to be very similar against that particular pitcher versus you. So you can kind of base it off just by observing one single game, what these guys are going to do, right? And I would say I don't even know if this part is like advanced scouting, but I care more so about the last like series, 3 or 4 games, than I do the season, right? I think a lot of pitchers will look at seasonal breakdowns for guys. And in my experience, I've learned that hitters are a byproduct of their last like series. So last 3 to maybe 7, games, instead of what they've done for that entire season. Same thing for pitchers, right? Like bullpen guys. Now there's going to be outliers, of course, right? Like you can face a guy that in his last 7 games is 0 for freaking 21, and then against you he goes 4 for 4. Like that's always gonna happen. But look at those last 7 games, the last 15 games. Those statistics, I believe, are going to give you a better idea for a hitter's attack plan. But just again, I'm trying to understand and read a hitter's attack, because then I'm going to, obviously go in the opposite direction of what he's trying to do. That gives me as a pitcher a little bit more conviction, I believe, in every single pitch, a mental conviction in pitches, because there's that preparation phase mentally, and that's where I think scouting reports are extremely beneficial, because it kind of starts subconsciously getting in there, and subconsciously this layer of belief in the old noggin that like you're prepared. And as soon as you feel prepared mentally, that leads into that conviction physically. So that would be the why that I do it, but 100%. That's a 22-minute video. So those are but really good question. I can honestly speak a little bit more on some other things, but that is a lot of context on a singular or 2 lines worth of words and questions. So hopefully, you got something out of that. Philip, thank you to Philip. It's not Felipe, is it? Thank you to Philip for asking that really good question. And if there's anyone that wants a little bit more information, I can probably talk about this for like another hour, because there's so many little like subcomponents to scouting, and especially advanced scouting, that I could touch on. But I wanted to throw a lot of those things in there. So hopefully that helps somebody kind of, wanting to get an approach, because I'm sure there's so much confusion surrounding like scouting reports, because I think it's one of those things younger pitchers like know that they should do because it looks good, but they don't quite know how to truly use it to their benefit. right? And that's kind of where I was at too, as an 18-year-old in professional baseball. I was like, I know I wanted to use this stuff, but like how? And then what you do is you just start writing stuff down, and then you start realizing in performance, like what you need. Like it kind of works itself out in that way, because you'll start realizing, I don't really need to know this about this guy. Like I don't need to know this, but like I really want to know that. I really want to know that. So tendencies, approach, again, I'm basically just trying to paint a picture for what this guy's trying to do against me. Now that's not gonna get me out of my traditional approach that makes me who I am as a starting pitcher, but it's little things that I can utilize in an at bat that gives me just that little bit more leeway to potentially make a mistake, because, I went against what he's trying to do. And this is such a fine line, because you get really close to falling victim of that over articulation up here, that robot-like approach. And then you're pitching to a scouting report instead of just like competing. And that's the biggest thing for me personally that I try to avoid is foundationally, athleticism, competition. Those are your two things, right? Like no matter what, always just freaking compete, be a dog, but also be freaking an athlete and have fun doing it, because it is really fun. There's been so many times in my career where I try to just be somebody that I wasn't, somebody that's like, ooh, look at me, I got a little book and I can read things that I know about that guy because I've observed, and now I'm going to go out and do things that I'm not typically used to doing, but some freaking guy did last week and got him out. So I'm going to do that. Personally identify those key components of a scouting report that could be of use to you, right? But I've met so many freaking guys along my journey that like don't want anything to do with scouting reports. They don't even want to watch the dang game, because if they watch the game, they might pick up on something and then they'll think about it when they're performing. And it's like, I get it, right? Like I 100% get it. But that's the most important layer to everything that I'm talking about here within, scouting reports and stuff, is first and foremost, personally identify you before anything, right? If you're somebody that feels suffocated with scouting reports, freaking don't do them, dude. But just don't use that as an excuse because you don't want to put in the work. You know what I'm saying? Know for certain. And that's kind of, I might not have had the best career playing wise in affiliated ball, but that's what I can look back and be grateful for, is like, dang, dude, I may not have had the performance I wanted, but there were so many little pieces in that, career, especially in the early stages, that like I can learn from, and like my application to those learning endeavors might not have been the best, but I still went through them, right? And now maybe I'm better equipped now to give back like in this way. All right. Great question, Philip. Appreciate you guys. And as always, reach out therobbyrowshow.com/ask if there's any questions you guys want me to talk about like this. Cool. Much love. God bless. Till next time. See ya.